How would you feel if you woke up in a strange hotel room? If the telephone operator, the bellboy, called you by a strange name? And if you noticed a strange perfume that you knew you had never used?
Theater 5 presents The Lesson.
I suppose it seemed always to have been there. In any case, everything started with the telephone. Yes. Hello?
Good morning, Mrs. Ferris. It's 9 o'clock.
Yes. All right. Who? Wrong room, I thought. Then I thought, room? I opened my eyes and looked again. I didn't have the faintest idea of where I was or what I was doing there. Or what that blasted ticking was or where it came from. Why my head aches so. At least the ticking stopped. I looked at the sky through a window opposite, and I didn't know what day it was or what week it was or how long I'd been here or how I'd gotten here. Who had been sleeping in the rumpled bed next to the one I was in. I listened and heard no one. I could see into the bathroom and saw no one, and I wondered what had made me think it was a man until I saw clothes hanging in the open closet. Some men's clothes and some women's, too. I tried to get up, to have a closer look at them, but I couldn't make it. But I knew by this time that the women's clothes wouldn't be mine any more than the men's clothes would be Tom's. Tom? Tom? Tom! He didn't answer. He wasn't there. I didn't know where he was or how I'd gotten here without him or whether he was looking for me. Oh, he must be looking for me. He wouldn't come home from the office and find I wasn't there and not wonder what had happened to me. He must be looking, and he'd find me. Somehow he would. I'd just wait for him. I'd just lie down. Oh, to lie down, go to sleep, give in, give up. Only I couldn't. Mrs. Ferris wouldn't let me. Mrs. Ferris? I know it doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense to me either, but there it was. Or rather, there she was. I didn't see her and I didn't hear her, not at first anyway, but she was there. I could tell by her perfume. It had to be Mrs. Ferris. Who else could it be? I was in her room, and her perfume was all around me, trying to wake me up. Trying to... No, not all around me, but there. There, by the telephone. The telephone. Of course.
Yes, Mrs. Ferris?
May I have some breakfast, please?
Certainly. The usual?
Yes, and, 2 pots of coffee black.
I'll have it sent right up.
Thank you. could have come from me. When the boy came with breakfast, I wondered how I could work up the strength to get up and in, but I needn't have worried. He didn't even wait for me to answer his knock. He came right in. That didn't frighten me, but the thought that came with it did. Maybe I was bedfast.
Good morning, Mrs. Ferris. How are you feeling?
Oh, all right, thank you. A little groggy.
Well, the bitter with the sweet, I guess. Do you want me to open a window?
Yes, please. It seems awfully stuffy.
You can say that again.
What did he mean, the bitter with the sweet? Something. Whatever it is, he seemed to know what it was. I wished I did. I wished, too, that I knew whether or not... Well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. I am so sorry. I don't remember your name.
That's all right, Mrs. Ferris. I understand. It's Mike. Are you okay now?
If I could just have some coffee.
Sure thing.
Thank you. Oh. That's what I needed.
Well, if you're sure you're all right.
Yes.
I'll be back in half an hour for the dishes.
All right. Weak or not, I had to see. I couldn't believe it. I pushed myself up from the side of the bed, stumbled, staggered, somehow managed to propel those cotton candy legs of mine to the bathroom mirror. My hair wasn't my hair at all. It was long and golden and hung nearly to my waist. My own hair is short and brown. It was my face. It was me. What was I doing here? Why did they, Mrs. Ferris? And what was supposed to be the matter with me? The bitter with the sweet. Is it the pain? Pain. What medicine? And Mike's understanding that I couldn't remember his name. Was I drugged or something? Oh, my head felt like I'd been drugged. All the time? Or at night, anyhow? There it was again. No, not it. She. Perfume. And that fretful little cry. Mrs. Ferris. Mrs. Ferris. There was only the perfume.
All finished, Mrs. Ferris?
Yes, Mike, thank you. Well, what is it?
Why, it's just... Excuse me, ma'am, but, well, you hardly ever touch your food. You really must be feeling better.
Oh, I am. I wonder, Mike, could you get me a paper?
A newspaper?
From kind of space I gathered, I hardly ever touch one of those either. But I had to know where I was, what day it was. I thought, Mike, that I might like to go out shopping.
Sure, Mrs. Ferris. Sure thing. I'll bring one up for you in a jiff.
What was I doing, sitting on a strange bed, in a strange hotel room, trying to outguess a bellhop and figure out what was wrong with some woman I'd never even heard of? Mrs. Ferris, or no Mrs. Ferris, I was Pat Hopkins, Mrs. Thomas Hopkins, and I was going to get dressed and get out of here. Let somebody else make some sense out of it. The thing to do was to get to a phone booth someplace and call Tom. And if I couldn't get Tom, then go to the police. Oh, here, a newspaper. Newspaper, good. Friday, 16th. Friday. Wasn't there something about Thursday, something I had to do on Thursday afternoon? Oh, well, what does it matter? The thing to do was to get up. It wasn't possible. The door was locked. Sorry to bother you, but my door seems to be locked. Can you send somebody up, please?
Why, Mrs. Ferris? Just as soon as possible.
Thank you. But nobody came. There were 10 minutes and tried again. Operator, nobody came.
Why, I'm sorry, Mrs. Ferris. I'll send somebody up just as soon as possible.
This time I knew nobody would come. Hotels don't send somebody up to unlock a door as soon as possible. They send them right now. I was being kept a prisoner. Why, Mrs. Ferris, why? But she was no help to me. Maybe she didn't know either. I don't know when I started wondering if I'd lost my mind, maybe along about then. Nothing else made any sense. And I felt so tired. So tired, too tired to think. It was all too much. There was that ticking again. How could I fight when I didn't know what I was fighting or why I was there or what I was supposed to do? How could I help myself or even Mrs. Ferris, whoever she was? Is that it, Mrs. Ferris? Am I supposed to help you? But how? How can I do anything locked in here like this? Operator.
Why, Mrs. Ferris, I was just going to call you. I forgot to tell you before. Mr. Ferris left word he'd be back before noon.
But the door.
He should be along any minute now.
That's Fry again. And the perfume stronger than before. No. Something more than perfume. A musky something. Fear. Why, Mrs. Ferris, why fear? What is your husband going to do to you? Why are you afraid of him? What is he going to do to me? Mrs. Ferris, you've got to help me. I'm the one he's going to find here. And I don't know anything about him or what's between you. Dear heaven, I don't even know his name. I didn't hear him come up to the door. I didn't need to. The musky smell got so strong it was almost overpowering. And then, curiously, as the door opened, it seemed to fade. The reason was soon obvious. Mr. Ferris was not alone.
Well, my dear, I've brought someone to see you. Hello, Mrs. Ferris. I don't expect you to remember me. I'm Harvey McDonald.
Oh, yes, how nice.
You're looking very well. It's amazing, isn't it? How well she does look. Now, if I could only get her over this despondency. It's the medicine that does it, of course. Medicine? Well, can't you? I've been through all that with the doc. Take away the drugs and the pain is unbearable. So, 6 of one and half a dozen the other. But I keep a careful watch on her. Afraid if I leave her alone too long. Well, you know what I mean. Yes, of course. What a pity. Yes. Well, now, if you'd like to take a look...
My husband, so-called, this guy was deaf and dumb to talk about me the way he did right in front of me. And his friend, too. Or maybe everybody thought I was so dopey from the drugs I didn't hear anything unless it was spoken right in front of my face. Well, maybe the real Mrs. Ferris was doped, but I wasn't. And maybe she had some terrible pain, but I didn't. Only I didn't think she had either. I had a hunch she'd been given those drugs forcibly. Otherwise, why would she be so frightened of him? And it would make a perfect setup, wouldn't it, if he wanted to kill her? Everybody would think she had committed suicide because she was so despondent. He could just shove her out a window and then... All I could think of was that awful ticking. And something about a Thursday afternoon. Every Thursday afternoon at 2:30 sharp. Sharp. But what on Thursday afternoons at 2:30 sharp? And why had Tom laughed at me for wanting to do it, whatever it was? Why had he poked fun at me? And why did it all have to happen to me now here? If Mrs. Ferris had to be helped by somebody, why was the somebody me? How could I possibly do to help her? I was stronger than she was, but I wasn't that strong. Not strong enough to be any match for a man. A match for a man. A match for a man. Any man. Don't laugh at me, Tom. It isn't funny. There might be a time when it wouldn't be funny. Lots of things can happen, even in a nice suburban neighborhood. You aren't safe anywhere on the streets anymore. Oh, Mrs. Ferris, I'm trying. If I could just think. If your perfume could think. But there wasn't any more time to think. Mr. Ferris came back, smiling. He never stopped smiling. He smiled through it all. Even while he told me why he had to drug me. And why now he had to kill me. Something about money, but I hardly heard him. I was still trying to think. When he backed me up against the window, when he put his hands out to grab me, when then I knew what it was on Thursday afternoons at 2:30 sharp, and I knew what to do, and I did it. I didn't do it very well. I never had learned to do it very well, but I did it well enough for the Mr. What did
Easy, darling. Take it easy.
Tom. Oh, Tom.
I'm right here, sweetheart.
Tom, where am I?
Right where I told you you'd end up. In the
Hospital?
with a big fat bump on your head.
Give me a mirror.
You can't see the bump. It's in back.
It isn't the bump. It's my hair.
Your hair? Well, it's the same hair you've always had.
Yes. So it is. Mrs. Ferris.
Mrs. who?
Nothing. Just that ticking.
Oh, just that old clock of ours. I brought it in for you.
What am I doing here?
Getting the stars out of your vision and some sense into your head, I hope.
But... Oh... Thursday afternoon.
Mm-hmm. Thursday afternoon. Now, will you promise me something?
Oh, anything.
No more judo lessons.
No more judo lessons.
That's my girl. Oh, and look here. These flowers just came for
Oh,
you.
they're beautiful. Who sent them?
Well, I'm not quite sure. The card only has initials on it. M.F. Max Faust, maybe?
Mary Freeman, maybe. Or Mrs. Ferris.
Yeah, they're beautiful, all right. But typical hothouse variety, no smell at all.
No smell. Tom, you know about thought transference.
Yes?
Do you believe in people transference?
People transference?
Let me see your paper. No. Oh, never mind. He looked at me as if he thought I was still woolly-headed from my fall. But I just smiled at him. I could believe the whole thing was a dream. Or I could look in the paper and see if it really had happened. I think I wanted to believe it was just a dream. And directed by Ted Bell. In the cast, Grace Matthews, Peter Fernandez, Court Benson, Sylvia Lee, William Griffiths, and George
Petrie. Audio engineer Marty Folia.